Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Trainer Talk. Today we're on episode 53, so we just broke our 1 year mark. Today we're going to be kind of going back to the basics, so we just want to go over some basic terms with you guys when it comes to health and fitness. So, for example, we're going to kind of break down calories, the definition, what it actually does, protein, carbs, fats, your basal metabolic rate, and some other things, just to help you guys get a better understanding of these, to hopefully help you get better results. So we'll start out with just the calorie. Bethany will kind of define it and how it's used in our daily life.
Yeah, so the actual definition of a calorie is basically a heat measurement. It's the energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water to 1 degree Celsius. So I know it's a lot of arbitrary numbers, but basically it's a substance that when you break it down, it produces heat or energy in the form of heat, and it allows your body to move and do all the activities you want to do, whether that's working out or just breathing and sitting and surviving. The calorie, what it basically just is just a measurement. It's not something tangible like a bottle of water. It's a measurement, whereas people tend to use the word calorie a little bit wrong. They'll say like not all calories are the same, or like a calorie isn't a calorie, and a calorie is a calorie. It's a unit of measurement. So what they kind of mean is not all sources of calories are the same. Not that a calorie isn't just a calorie. So that's just kind of one thing that is put out there that produces a lot of confusion that I've seen.
Yeah, so it's basically just a unit of energy, actually. So
Yeah.
It's a measurement, it's a way that we measure energy. So we actually need calories to produce energy in our bodies. And that's what we want to try to help you guys understand.
Right.
Yeah, and I like the analogy that you guys always talk about, like to the cars. A calorie is fuel,
Right.
It is gasoline to what a car is to our bodies.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you obviously need fuel for your car to run. So we need fuel for our bodies to run. So we need calories, and we actually have to replenish it every day to make sure that we can run all day long. And that's why a lot of us hit a wall in the middle of the day, or maybe we wake up really, really groggy. It's usually because people aren't getting enough calories or energy for the day. So.
Yeah, and like your body's really good at maintaining homeostasis. We were kind of talking about that earlier when it comes to, like, we kind of talked about calories in, so calories out is the other portion of it. So we do talk about like the calories we burn during exercise. So yes, it's a unit of energy for what kind of food you're taking in, but then also for what your body is doing with that and how much calories your body needs to sustain its activities throughout the day. The total daily energy expenditure is how many calories you essentially burn throughout the day. That's comprised of your basal metabolic rate, which is basically what your body needs to just function at rest. Keep your digestion going, your brain functioning. Brain function actually takes a lot of it. But if you just sat down and just kind of like lay there all day, that's what your BMR would end up being. Non-exercise activity is like fidgeting, or if you're just kind of like standing around, that's non-exercise activity. If you're not like consciously trying to work out, whereas like if you're just kind of standing there fidgeting, people will burn a lot more calories just with that little movement.
Yeah, so just us standing here and doing this, we are actually burning more energy than if we were like sitting at a desk doing this. So, for people that have sedentary jobs, like if you got a standing desk, or if you got up and walked around a little bit during work, like you're going to burn a lot more calories actually while you're at work than if you just sat all day.
Same thing comes with like talking. Like there's people that go out that are speakers. Like I think you mentioned it before. I can't remember the exact numbers of what certain public speakers would burn when they're on stage and they're talking for hours. I mean, they're going to burn a lot of calories from the amount of mental energy that they're using and just the activity of talking and speaking and walking, which people don't really think about, but that also kind of plays into it too.
Fun fact that just made me think of this, there's a lot of people that are big Tony Robbins fans. He's a really popular mentor and kind of life coach and stuff among the whole country and the world. and he does seminars, usually like 1 or 2 a year, maybe more. And it's like 3 days where he's talking on stage and moving around for about 12 hours at a time. And they actually put a tracker on him, and he burned like 11 or 12,000 calories just doing a seminar 3 days in a row. And they said it was equivalent to him like running a marathon every single day for a 3-day seminar. So just thought that was kind of a fun fact. Like, you know, when you're, you know, talking and moving and doing presentations and stuff, like you actually burn a ton of energy doing that. So very cool.
Yeah. Then there's 2 more parts of like what your total daily energy expenditure is. It's thermic effective food. So your body has to use energy to break down the food that you eat. So in order to get the energy out of the food, you have to put energy in. And that's the thermic effective food. And we can kind of go into like how much the thermic effective food is affected by proteins, carbs, and fats. And then the last one, it's probably the smallest portion of what you burn in a day, is exercise activities. So intentionally coming to the gym and working out, you might burn 200, 300, maybe 400 calories, but in the grand scope of what you do throughout the day, your body just maintaining itself, all of your fidgeting, your walking around, your talking, that's going to burn more calories than when you exercise.
Yeah, so when you are looking at your trackers and you burn 400 calories, trust us when we say that those aren't the only calories you burn all day. That is a very small portion of the calories that you actually burn, because your basal metabolic rate is going to be the majority of it. And just to kind of give you an idea, there's a lot of different ways to measure this. There's some great calculators on the internet that you can just plug in your body weight, your age, height, and weight, stuff like that. But just a really simple way to do it is for females, about 10 calories per pound would be your basal metabolic rate. So if you weigh 150 pounds, your BMR would be around 1,500 calories. That's how many calories you need to just maintain bodily functions all day if you didn't do anything. And then if you are slightly active, you know, maybe you have somewhat of an active job, or maybe you work out a couple days a week, you can usually add about 50% of those calories onto that. So you'd add about another 750 onto it, and then about another 10% for just your thermal regulation, maintaining your body weight, things like that. So somebody that's 150 pounds as a female might need 2,600, 2,700 calories in a day just to be able to maintain her energy and her weight and everything. So that is about how much energy we're talking about. A lot of people that we work with are needing less than that, because just from years of not eating the right foods in the right amounts, they're actually not very efficient at burning energy, which Bethany will kind of get a little bit more into. She talked about a great example of one of her clients before we started the video, which we might as well just share that, to hopefully help you guys with your progress and your results in the future too.
Yeah, so I was talking to my client yesterday, and she's been having really good success with losing weight consistently for months now. I think it's kind of coming up on a year. I think in a couple months it'll be a year since she joined the gym and did an initial challenge to like get in, but then she stayed in the gym. And she's lost a ton of weight and made an incredible transformation, like physically and mentally. So where she started when she came to me, she was eating like probably 1,200 calories a day, maybe. It probably ranged anywhere from like 1,000 to 1,200. And she explained to me that when she works like shift work at a hospital, she just doesn't think to eat. She forgets to eat. And like that's where she would go all day without eating, and then she would only eat before and after work. So I kept increasing her calories. She kept losing weight through this time, because I'm assuming that her total daily energy expenditure was pretty high before, you know, starting to really put in healthy foods, because they're less calorie dense, so you're naturally eating less calories. So she was eating such little, but she was probably burning, you know, 2,600 calories a day with the amount of movement she was doing, plus coming to the gym and working out, that she was in a really big deficit. So did it help her to lose weight a lot initially? Yeah, and now she's at a place where she's eating around 1,900, 1,800 calories. Her weight's sort of plateaued, but she keeps losing fat, which is a good sign. Could just be because she is, you know, new to the gym, so she's doing a little of the recomp where, you know, you burn fat and gain muscle at the same time. It's possible if you're a beginner, once you get more advanced, it's not as easy to see that. Obviously, we all wish that was the case, but it's just more for beginners. And I kind of explained to her that I'm going to keep increasing her calories until progress stops. Like if progress stalls, then I'll know this is where your total daily energy expenditure is. So to maintain her weight, maintain her body wherever it's at with the exercise she's doing. So I told her that if we get to that point, say it's 2,400 calories, which is a lot for some people. Like if they think about that, that's probably double what she was eating before. Now, when she hits that plateau, all I have to do is take her back to 2,000 calories and the fat will start burning again. And so the weight will start coming off again.
So she'll actually be eating 800 more calories on average and still losing fat and making progress.
Yes.
So very cool. So her body will just become that much more efficient at burning calories. So if somebody ever dropped back down even to 1,500, they'll really lose a lot of weight.
Yeah. So yeah, she'd be losing more weight by eating more than she was in the beginning.
Right.
So like when you kind of break down the calorie burn and the calories in, calories out sort of equation, it is important to not go into too much of a deficit, because let's say I kept her at 1,200 calories and just said, oh, well, you're losing weight, so I'm not going to change anything. And then what happens when she hits a plateau? Do I make her work out more when she doesn't have time, or do I make her eat 800 calories a day, which is one, awful for the body and health-wise, and two, very hard to sustain, because like what if she wants to go out on the weekend and go out to eat? If she's able to still have a life outside of, the gym and eating and working, then it's going to be way more sustainable for her in the long term. So that's kind of our main goal, is like have something that's sustainable for the long term, but still help them get results.
That's a great way to put it too. Like, so she, in this example, could go out and eat 2,400 calories and be okay, whereas if she did that, she would most likely gain weight.
Yes.
If she did it over and over again or every weekend or something like that, because she would be in such a surplus. So with what she's doing, she's gradually working her up, and she's becoming way more efficient with her body, probably feeling a lot better, probably has a lot more energy too for work, because she's got that extra energy. Like we said, calories are just energy. So she's definitely going to feel better, and she's going to be able to sustain results for a lot longer, because she can go out and do stuff whatever she likes without derailing her progress. Very cool.
I know you've kind of done some of that stuff with your clients too, like the reverse dieting.
Yeah, that's just to kind of like touch on that. I think it's important for a client to think long term and work with a coach long term to help do that, because a lot of times it takes a year, maybe longer, to get somebody's body to adapt to a new amount of energy that you're inputting into your body, and going along with like the exercise that you're doing now too. That's why we always focus really heavy on protein and things like that, because we don't want to see you break down in the gym. We want to see you build up and then hopefully lose the fat, is what we're trying to accomplish there. And it takes a long time. I know I've had clients that for almost a year we didn't see any change, but we built the metabolism up, we did the right things, building muscle, and then we can cut from a way more comfortable place, like Bethany's talking about. Instead of having to go from, or taking her client to 800 calories because her metabolism had adapted to burn 1,200 a day, we can slowly increase, what she talked about, reverse dieting, slowly increasing the calories until she's more near her basal metabolic rate, where she's burning naturally anyway, and then it's a lot more comfortable to cut from that point, instead of having to go below what I would ever take somebody. I've seen people, coaches take their clients to that low, which I think is really honestly dangerous, and just in the long run going to hurt your results overall, because you might lose that weight, you might lose 10 pounds, but then when you go back to normal eating or a normal routine, you're going to put it all back on plus some.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you mentioned with working out. So when we find out how many calories our clients are eating, we'll actually recommend sometimes some of our clients need to cut back on workouts, because they're not, compared to how much they're eating, they might be working out too often. So they're burning too much energy, and then they break down the muscle, which is kind of what we're going to talk about next when we talk about protein. So we might as well just go into, so all that was on calories. That was all on energy, calories. So now we're going to go to protein, which is made up of 20 amino acids, which think of it like the building blocks of muscle and tissue. So you have to have protein to build and maintain muscle mass. So even if you're not working out, you still need protein to maintain the muscle that you do have. But in order to build muscle, you also have to get protein in there. And Bethany will talk about the balance of the two and the protein in and protein out, so that you guys can have a better understanding of how to actually build muscle, maybe at the same time that you're trying to drop body fat too.
Yeah. One more basic thing about protein is it has 4 calories per gram.
Yes.
So if you're eating 20 grams of protein, that's 80 calories. So
that's the measurement of energy for protein.
And another quick note, we mentioned thermic effective food. Proteins actually has the highest rate of thermic effective food. It's anywhere from like 20 to 30% of like the calories you take in. So say you have protein and it's 100 calories. You're burning probably 30 calories just to digest that protein. So even though you're getting 100 calories in, you're burning the 30 calories just to break it down, because proteins, like, it's very structured together, and it's hard for your body to break it down, so it has to use more energy, which is why when people typically eat more protein, they tend to lose more weight, because it does change the thermic effect of food. It makes them fuller too.
Yeah.
So, and another example, like if you were tracking this in your MyFitnessPal or whatever, and you know, at the end of the day, when you put in all your food, and if you had 150 grams of protein, you could realistically count 105 of that, or you know, take 30% of that amount right off, because your body is burning that. It's kind of what she's saying.
I mean, essentially, yeah.
Essentially,
I mean, you're not going to eat like 200 grams of protein and think, oh, I'm only eating 150. Like, your body still uses it. It just, that's when it comes.
You're burning it up.
Yeah.
Pretty much while you're digesting.
Right. Yeah. So, with protein, and when it comes to muscle building, what your body is doing is constantly repairing your muscles from, let's say, a workout. You work out and your muscles actually get broken down, and it gets little micro tears in it, which then become stronger through repair. So your body is constantly breaking down like old or damaged muscle tissues and then rebuilding them. So that's always happening in the body. So muscle breakdown and then muscle building. What happens for building muscle versus losing muscle is the balance or the ratio of the two. So if you're building more muscle than you're losing at that point, then you're going to build muscle. But if you're breaking down more muscle than you're actually building, then you're going to lose muscle. What it kind of comes down to is the amount of protein that you're getting in. Like, if you're not eating enough protein, but you're doing constant workouts that break down your muscle, you're not able to build the muscle back that you're breaking down. So you're just going to keep breaking down your muscle, and that's how people end up losing muscle, like from working out too much and then not recovering enough. So that's another really big thing that I think people don't understand. They think that, oh, I'm getting so much stronger because I'm working out so hard, and I'm doing, 10 sets of this exercise and 10 sets of that and trying to do max weight, and it's like, that's way too much. It's just, you're not going to be able to recover from that. Your body is going to basically just survive and try to maintain its muscle as much as it can, but it's not going to build with that kind of situation or scenario. You guys have anything to add on protein?
I mean, I think it's the most important macronutrient there is. I mean, carbs are really, really important too, in my opinion, but I think protein, especially for people that are working out consistently, especially resistance training, it's the most important and what I have most clients focus on, especially to start.
Yeah, typically after calories, we try to get people to shoot for a protein goal. For most people, the easiest way to do it is just like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Realistically, you only need about 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, or around there. But it goes for people that you don't have to be working out to eat enough protein. Like, if you do any type of activity at all during the day, if you walk, or if you have like more of a manual labor job, for example, you're still breaking down and using your muscle, and you need protein to repair it. So just think about that. You still need protein even if you're not somebody that works out all the time. But however, if you are working out and you are constantly breaking down the muscle and need to repair it, then you're going to need more protein to do so.
And actually, as we age, we need more protein as well,
Yes.
since our bodies are prone to breaking down muscle rather than building it. So that's a common misconception. Is like, I get, older women, like even my mom, I told her, I'm like, Mom, you're gonna need more protein than I probably need, just because, you're not prone to be building muscle right now. Like, your body kind of just wants to break it down, like as you age. So you actually need more protein as you get older. And one thing that kind of comes back to like general recommendations from people, they'll see like the RDA for protein from some sort of like nutrition like institute or something like that, and it's really low. It's like 40 or 50 grams a day, and that's not the optimal dose. That is the minimum needed to like not have a deficiency. So people see that and they're like, oh, I'm getting enough protein, or like on the package it'll say like, oh, 25% of your recommended daily value, and it's 25% of the like minimum dosage. So just kind of keep that in mind with protein. Is like, yes, there's a bare minimum, but what's optimal is definitely much more than that. We can kind of move into carbs next. So carbs are 4 calories a gram, same thing as protein. So 100 calories is usually 25 grams of carbs. Think about it as like a banana or an apple, something like that. Carbohydrates are basically the body's main energy source. It's broken down into glucose, which can be used right away. People talk a lot about blood glucose and insulin related to carbs, but it's a natural flow with it. You are gonna release insulin when your blood glucose goes up, but what insulin does is it shuttles the carbohydrates and the glucose into your muscles or into fat cells for storage. So you can store carbohydrates in your muscles, you can store it in your liver as glycogen, and you can store it in fat for future breakdown. So carbohydrate just functions mostly as an energy source. You can also get fiber from carbohydrates and stuff like that too.
Yeah. So when we talk about we'll also kind of talk about simple and complex carbs. So when you think about simple carbs, that's your sugars. So anything that has sugar in it, that's going to be pretty much digested right away. So when she says that carbohydrates gets broken down into glucose, that spikes your insulin, which can shuttle it into the muscle or for storage for fat. So if you have an abundance of sugar, which a large majority of people in the United States have way too much sugar today, and they don't burn it off fast enough, that's why they store so much as fat, is because it's just shuttling it into there unless you need it for energy. So if you are going to have sugar, it's great for a workout because you're going to use it up as fuel right away. Whereas complex carbohydrates, even though it's getting broken down to the same thing, still getting broken down into glucose like she said, but it takes a lot more to break it down, and it's slower digesting than a simple sugar. So just think of it, more complex is harder to break down than a simple. That's the easiest way to think of it. So like your oats and your potatoes and stuff like that, that is going to be more of a complex carbohydrate that isn't instantly going to be shuttled for either fuel or fat.
Yeah, you can kind of think of it of like having an orange versus pure orange juice. Like an orange has a lot more fiber, it has all the nutrients still in it, so it's going to take your body longer to digest it, and it will be a slower release of glucose. And then when you have orange juice, it's like sucking down, it's honestly similar to pop. There's more micronutrients in there, but like the amount of sugar that's in orange juice and the amount of sugar that's in a pop is pretty similar actually, and it's going to behave kind of similarly in your body by spiking insulin, really raising up your blood glucose. So it can be good when you have a lot of muscle because you're more likely to store that energy, like that carbohydrates, in the muscle, rather than putting it towards fat stores. Because you think of it as you have a large 1 gallon jug, and the water that you have, you can either pour it into the large 1 gallon jug or you can pour it into a little glass. The glasses would be your muscles. So the bigger the muscles, the more you can pour in there without it spilling over into fat. So
Great way to put it.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I've never heard that. I'm gonna piss some people off, and I'm gonna go ahead and say carbs are pretty much a vital macronutrient. I think for brain function and bodily functions overall, without carbs it'd be a lot harder to function in a day. And I think it's why a lot of people that do like a keto diet get like what we would call like the keto flu, or like feeling really lethargic for a while. It's because they don't have this macronutrient. I like to say, like in the most simple terms, carbs are synonymous with sugar and starches.
Yep.
So most of the times your fruits, if you want to increase your carb intake, you can have more fruits. Trying to stay away from the processed foods. Like I think that's kind of the point you guys were getting at with the carbs. Like you can have the orange, or you can have the orange juice that's processed. The orange is going to be a lot better carb for us to break down and use. It's going to be a lot slower as far as that goes. So I think carbohydrates are very much necessary. The recommended daily allowance or intake of them is like 40 to 65% of our total calories. So a big portion.
So
of
most
our
of our
calories.
calories actually are going to be coming from carbohydrates.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's really all I have. I said, like I said, they're going to give the energy to the working muscles and the brain to function. Is
And
what I have written
I
down.
do want to add real quick, like she mentioned earlier, when we talked about basal metabolic rate, like the calories that you burn at rest is mostly used by your brain, and the fuel that your brain uses is primarily carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So that's why when you know, if somebody goes on a really low carb diet, for example, they feel completely fatigued
Brain
and
fog.
mental fatigue, brain fog. A lot of times when you wake up and you instantly turn to that, cup of coffee, you really just probably slightly dehydrated, and you just probably need some carbs to get going in the morning to fuel yourself. So instead of jumping straight to the caffeine or something like that, you probably just are lacking some of those vital macronutrients and vitamins and minerals in the hydration.
Yeah.
Moving on to fats. So this is another really important one because over the last 50 years, as a country, we've been told that fat makes you fat, which is completely inaccurate. We definitely need fats, and we're going to go over the benefits of fats. So for me, this is actually something that I've been focusing a lot more on in the last couple of years, is getting in a lot of healthy fats. And the primary reason for me is for hormonal balance and my joints and stuff like that. So as a pretty avid CrossFit athlete, we are beating our bodies up. We obviously need a ton of carbs, we need a ton of protein to rebuild, but also we're like putting our bodies through a lot, and we need to make sure that we're taking good care of our joints and things like this, just to be able to keep doing what we're doing. But for the average person that deals with knee pain, hip pain, and back pain and all that stuff, just eating more healthy fats will definitely help you with inflammation of the body and your joint health and things like this. Plus, omega-3s are one of the only nutrients that can actually go through the blood-brain barrier. So omega-3 fats are amazing for brain health, and they can actually help with reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease, for example. So your brain absolutely loves fats as well, so that's why we highly encourage healthy fats. You do want to stay away from obviously saturated fats and trans fats like potato chips and stuff. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking more about egg yolks and avocados and nuts and seeds and things like that. So Bethany, go ahead and kind of spill in whatever else you want to talk about.
So for fat, that's actually the most calorie dense of our macronutrients. It's 9 calories per gram. So if you have 10 grams of fat, which is 1 tablespoon of butter, it's basically 90 calories. So the amount, the small amount of butter, it's a lot of calories. So people don't always realize if they're putting oil or butter on things, the amount of calories that go into it. Even though the size of the meal, or a handful of nuts, that's got quite a bit of calories that people don't necessarily realize. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, it's a lot of calories in there. 2 actual tablespoons, not your
Guessing.
serving spoons of that. Yeah. So people.
Wait, people do 2 and not 10?
Yeah. Some people do more than others. Some people need a lot more fats than others too. But fats, yeah, they're very essential. If we don't have enough fats, then it runs into hormonal problems, especially women, but men too. I mean, that's what hormones are made of, is fats. They're broken down into lipids, and then, those are also stored in our body as well. But it comes down to all of our bodily functions and hormonal function regulation, especially with like brain health, like you were talking about. It definitely plays a role there. Inflammation, like you were talking to, like anything we do, like workout wise, it creates inflammation in our bodies, whether that's joints or in the muscles, and having the fats for long-term health, longevity, and lowering that inflammation is always really good. For fats, basically anywhere at least probably 20 to 35%, 30-35% of your daily calories, I would say is a pretty good range, especially if you're on the higher carb end. Some people, they think that if they are doing keto, so I mean, we like to hate on keto a lot, I'm not gonna lie. But let's just keep using that and throwing it under the bus.
We hate on every diet except your own diet, right?
That's true. The one that works best for you. Hey,
Yeah.
if keto works great for you, fine, long term. If it works great for you for 2 months, no. Anyways, if you're doing a very high fat and low carb diet, people will say that it's more fat burning. You're going to burn more fat because your body has to switch to, instead of burning carbs, you're burning fat as fuel. That's true, but you're also eating more fat, so you have to store more fat in order to burn it. So if you're thinking about how this kind of works is, let's say you're eating way more fat than carbs, so your body starts to burn fat as fuel. Your body needs to learn how to store that fat because it thinks, oh, this is what we got to use for fuel now for all of our activities. So we need to store as much of it as we can in order to use that for energy. So whether or not you're losing weight or gaining weight depends on basically how much calories you're eating. Even if you're burning more, a lot of fat, you can still be storing a lot of fat if you're eating quite a bit of it. So it's more comes down to the balance. Similar to I said with the muscles and the protein, the fat storing has to be less than the fat, has to be less than the fat burning that's going on in your body. It's going on at the same time. It's not like you're either storing fat or you're either burning fat. It's not a one or the other. It's not like a switch. It's kind of like a balance of what's more and what's less right now. And then when it comes to exercise like lifting weights or you're doing some sort of powerlifting or CrossFit, you're burning mostly carbs because it's very high intensity. But if you're burning carbs, your body's going to want to store more carbs. And what stores the most carbs is muscle, kind of like I was talking about earlier. So even if you are eating more carbs and you're burning more carbs, you'll store more carbs. So whatever fuel that you're using in your body is what you're going to want to store more of. So even if you are eating more fat, burning more fat through exercise, like cardio, great for burning fat, but you also store more fat too, because you want to support that exercise. Now, if you're burning more carbs for energy, you want to store more carbs, have bigger muscles, all the good things that we always talk about. So hopefully that didn't go over everyone's head, but I tried to separate it as much as I could.
Yeah, it definitely, even to us that have studied this, it gets kind of confusing. That's why we like to try to make it as simple as possible to people. And just to finish on fats here, it is another essential macronutrient for the body. It's going to help absorb a lot of different vitamins also. So you mentioned mostly what I wanted to, the building block for hormones. That's really important, one of the most important things about fats. And then kind of getting to what's a healthy versus unhealthy fat, we kind of touched on it. I would say if I had to make a easy comparison, olive oil or avocado oil versus a corn oil or a vegetable oil, the hydrogenated oil, that's a big difference between fats. Their profile, 2 tablespoons is probably 120 to 140 calories, but the olive oil and avocado oil, a lot less processed a lot less easy, or a lot easier for our body to break down.
It's better for your body.
Yeah. That comes down to like what you had mentioned with the omega-3s. There's like omega-3s, omega-6s. The omega-6s are more inflammatory, so causing more inflammation in the body. That's where like your joints hurt. And then omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. The ones that you had said, the avocado oil and stuff you get from salmon and nuts and seeds, that's higher ratio, so more omega-3s, less of the omega-6s, whereas the typical corn and soybean oil is more omega-6s. So that's why those processed ones, even if they're the same calories and the same amount of fat, the quality of it and what it does in your body is different.
Yeah. Yep. And I like that you mentioned fat-soluble vitamins. So there are vitamins that will not be utilized by the body unless they are with fats or have fats to be able to utilize them. So vitamin D, for example, probably one of the most important, if not the most important vitamin we need, is a fat-soluble vitamin. So that's why most of the time if you do take it, they recommend taking it with a meal so that you're getting some fats with it, which is, he mentioned important macronutrients. So you have your protein, your carbs, your fats, or your macronutrients, and you have your micronutrients, which is going to be vitamins and minerals. And then I also throw water in there because we obviously need water to survive as well. So we obviously need vitamins and minerals. And just to kind of give you a quick idea on that, when we mentioned the examples of like orange juice in an orange or apple juice in an apple, the orange and the apple are going to have more fiber, plus they're going to be loaded with vitamins and minerals, which we need those just for chemical processes throughout the body and for overall health. So getting the antioxidants and things like that from them. So we encourage you guys to steer more toward the whole foods. When you do choose your foods for calories and macronutrients, and we might as well give them just kind of a basic recommendation on percentages maybe for what we recommend. Like these guys said, like we don't mean to necessarily bash on keto, but if you're somebody that knows you can never ever go carbs for the rest of your life, without carbs for the rest of your life, I would recommend trying it. You know, for the 10% of people that do keto and can do that for the rest of their life, that's fantastic. Like, it's going to be great for them. But the reality is, I would say probably 90% of people that try it aren't going to be able to do it forever. So we encourage people and we work with people to try to figure out a diet or nutrition plan that's kind of custom for them that they can sustain forever, which is typically going to consist of all three macronutrients in a good amount of each. So for me, when I work with clients, I usually recommend like 30% protein roughly, 40% carbs, and 30% fats. It can vary. For myself, actually, since I eat so many calories, I actually go more toward like 20-25% protein because I'm still getting enough grams, but I'm ramping up those carbs. So I'm usually having like 45-50%, maybe even more for carbs, and then right around the 30% for fats. Maybe if you guys wanted to say what your percentage recommendations are.
Yeah, that's kind of like what my percentage is, like if very similar to what you said with like 25% protein, higher carbs and fats. Another way you can do it too is like once you have the amount of calories that you need, either through a calculator or you figure out through tracking, and then do, a good recommendation is like 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. That is also a good one too, because let's say someone's 300 pounds, realistically they're not going to be able to get 300 grams of protein in without slamming a lot of protein shakes.
Yeah.
So like 1 gram per pound of lean body mass is usually a pretty good starting point. Some people like higher protein and that's completely fine. Some people couldn't, they struggle to get enough protein. So maybe on the lower end is going to be fine for them. And then the carbs and fats just kind of come down to personal preference, honestly, and like what kind of exercise you're doing. Like if you're doing more weight training and cardio, and well, not necessarily cardio, but CrossFit type style cardio, maybe higher carb is better for you. And then, if you're more of like an endurance runner, then you want more fats, and that's completely fine too. At the end of the day, it really comes down to like protein and calories is like the most important when it comes to fat loss anyways.
Yeah, definitely the calories is the most important. I always play around with it. I would say like in general though, it's usually like, I'll have people like 35% protein, 35% carbs, and then like 30% fats. But I think it's a good thing to play around with because everybody is different. So it's just like, whatever you feel best doing. Personally, for me, that's a high protein diet. I'm usually probably closer to like 35 to 40% of my total calories is proteins, and then like 35 to 40 is carbs, and like more like 20 to 25% for fats. And I feel really good off of that, but somebody might feel way better with a little bit higher fats and lower protein or something like that. So it's more of as long as you're keeping the calories around the same area, you can play around with those, the amount of grams of macronutrients that you're getting.
And like what she said, like to figure out your protein first is a great way to do it, because if you need 4,000 calories, you're not just going to multiply that by 30% for your protein, because you might get a ton of grams of protein. So if you did, if I'm 5% body fat, so I'm pretty close to the 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight in lean body mass. So if I need 190 grams, multiply that by 4 calories per gram, because we learned that there's 4 calories per gram for protein. So 190 times 4 is 760 calories out of my 4,000. So if I just do that division, I'll get a percentage. And then I use the rest for my carbs and protein.
Fats.
Yeah, carbs and fats.
Yeah.
Sorry, carbs and fats. So that's another easy way to do it. Most people aren't going to need 4,000 calories, so they can get away with having a higher percentage of protein. But typically, you want to go more along the lines of that 1 pound per lean body mass.
Yeah. So. One more macronutrient we forgot to touch on was alcohol. So you see like an alcoholic drink, I mean, I really don't know that much, but typically if you look at a label, it'll say like, all right, so here's the amount of carbs and protein or whatever. It'll say the alcoholic content. But if you see something like a seltzer, like a White Claw or something, and it'll say low carb, because it has maybe 4 grams of carbs in it, you're like, oh, well, that's good, because 4 grams of carbs, that's only 16 calories. It's not that simple.
If only it was.
If only it was.
Yeah.
It's not just 25 calories. It's not just the carbs. Alcohol also has calories. So it's actually very close to fat. It's 7 calories per gram of alcohol.
A gram would be 1 beer, 1 shot, or like a 5-ounce glass of wine is a gram of alcohol.
It is? Oh, I always thought that it was like, for a White Claw, it would end up being like 100 calories.
Oh, well, totally, yeah.
Yeah, even if it's like 4 grams of carbs, like 16 calories of that 100 is coming from carbs. The rest of it's coming.
The remaining of it's coming from the alcohol.
Yeah, it's something. It does have something to do with the percentage of the alcohol. But yeah, it's not just like if it's low carb. If you're just having straight vodka and you're not adding any juice to it,
it doesn't mean it's 0 calories.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's 0 calories. So you either have to like if you want to track it, like it's fine if you do have alcohol. Try not to. It's not great for you. But if you do indulge, in some adult beverages sometimes, what you want to do is equate for it either in your fats or your carbs. So if you have 100 calories of alcohol, then you want to either take 100 calories from your total carbs or your total fats. You don't want to take it from protein, because protein is pretty important, as we touched on. So that's how you can kind of fit it in, since it's not like, even if you don't mix anything with it, it still counts for some calories. So that was the other macronutrient.
Cool.
One more thing that people get confused about is like where fat actually goes when you burn it. So what happens is like when you break it down in your body, so you have all your fat stores, right? And what our body uses as energy is either fats or carbs, and it essentially ends up breaking it down into glucose either way, which is basically once you break down the glucose, it turns into carbon dioxide and water. So the carbohydrate gets broken down into that when you combine it with oxygen, which we breathe in. So when you breathe in, you take in the oxygen, it combusts with the carbohydrates or the glucose, breaks down into CO2 and water. CO2 we breathe out, we remember that. So breathe in oxygen, breathe out CO2, and then water gets released through sweat, through breathing out too actually, and then when you pee it out. So that's the mechanisms that fat uses to leave the body.
So you're telling me that you don't lose fat through sweat, that
Not
you lose it
necessarily.
from your breath?
Mostly from your breath, actually.
That's interesting.
Yes. So when you breathe, so actually they've done studies where why exercise is really good for fat burning. Because you breathe so much, your respiratory rate increases so much, so you're breathing out a lot more than you're probably breathing in, because you're like panting and heaving. And I mean, it doesn't mean that you can sit in a chair and heave and then start burning more fat. Like you still, you know, you still have to do stuff to burn it and all that good stuff. But you know, I think a lot of people, like, they don't know. They just think fat just goes poof and then it's gone. But that's basically, it gets broken down and then released through breathing out, a little bit through sweating and pee. I think it's like 90% comes out through your breath and like 10% from sweating and other things. So, fun fact of the day, you breathed out your fat.
Cool.
All right.
I think that will cap it off. So that's our very basic, I mean, super simple
Basic.
stuff. That was a little bit more on the advanced side, but hopefully that made sense. Made sense to me. So that's our kind of episode today, just going over kind of the basic things on calories, carbs, fats, protein, alcohol. Hopefully this helps give you a better idea. When you're doing your grocery shopping, I would recommend just being more conscious of reading the labels, kind of figuring out, okay, how much grams of fats, you know, carbs and protein does it have, but also look at the ingredient list. You know, if it's got a million ingredients in there, I typically say to stay away from that. You want to try to find stuff that's more whole foods or has maybe 10 ingredients or less. Also, watch out for like hydrogenated oils and saturated fats and things like that. They're going to be a little bit less healthy. But all in all, it does come down mostly to the calorie intake. Like we said in the beginning, it's you want to try to build up your metabolism, be more efficient with it. That way, when you do go into a calorie deficit, you're able to break down and burn fat or whatever your goal is. You just want to be able to hit the right amount of calories and then work on the macronutrients kind of second. So if we were to give you a recommendation, focus on the calories first, then your protein is usually what we do, and then fill in the rest with your carbs and your fats, and any ratio that you like. You know, like Austin said, he likes this ratio. It works for him. Me and Bethany might have a different one, or all three of ours might be completely different. So it depends on how you feel in your body, because we are all different. This is a great recommendation, a great place to start. So just start reading labels and kind of being more conscious about this. Hopefully we helped you guys out. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer them for you. So stay healthy, you guys. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.